Oh, hello everyone. Hello again. I know these guys. That's a great feeling to be hosting events and see familiar faces. Hello. Where in the world are you? And we see a clear difference between this map and this morning's map, where we had kind of like the opposite, a lot of Asia, a lot of Europe, and now we obviously have the other side of the world journeying, which is really nice. Good morning and good evening. All right, Doi, what time do you have? I have to ask that. Please do tell us in the chat. What's your time? Welcome everyone, my name is Anna Maria. I am leading the Butter Community Project. I am today with Carlos and Meredith. They're part of our experts collective. There's a group of experts that we've put together, and they are the brilliant minds behind Collab Fest. This is the last session for today. We've been busy the whole day learning and sharing best practices and having fun while at it. And tomorrow is day 2 of Collab Fest, so stay tuned. We have a couple of very interesting sessions prepared as well. Great panels and conversations. Today we are going to talk about digital artifacts. So it's all about the traces we're leaving after we collaborate, after we get together and collaborate, either sync or async, and how do we make that collaboration, those results, that progress, that the whole goodness that comes out of those meetings and that work, how do we make it visible and traceable and refinable and so on. And I'm very excited for this session. The music you're hearing in the background can be fully controlled by each and one of you. If you hover over a tiny box at the bottom, you can play with the volume, so feel free to do so if it's too loud for you. And one other thing, just today, Collab Fest is we're teaming up with the awesome people at Design Matters conference. This is a 2-day conference for designers by designers happening end of September, and they were kind enough to provide us with 20 free live stream tickets for anyone that shares their Collab Fest learning. So just today, share them on LinkedIn, on Twitter using the hashtag CollabFest 2022 and tag us so we can find you, and you're hopefully going to be one of the lucky 20 winners. Feel free to take screenshots. Hey, be as creative. I don't have to tell you how to do this. I think you know how it's done. And for the last time today, who is in Butter for the very first time ever right now? I know majority of you aren't, because we've been spending a lot of hours together today. But Shrey is here for the first time. Welcome, Shrey, and welcome to Butter. So while we keep this poll going, I'm going to kill the music, and I'm going to introduce our hosts for today, Carlos and Meredith. With over 15 years of experience building up effective tech products and the teams that create them as well, Carlos is passionate about bringing people together around common goals to do their best work. He applies his educational background in business administration and his practical experience working with organizations of all shapes and sizes in areas of product management, product design, and marketing. You're also likely to find Carlos watching a Formula One race and spending time with Meredith and with their daughter, Aria. And Meredith, she also brings years of experience in marketing and strategy development, rallying competing organizations around common industry goals. With a love for finding connections between different points of view, Meredith channels that experience in creating high-performing teams that prioritize sound decision-making to get good work done. Of course, where else can you find Meredith besides Carlos and Aria watching the Formula One race days and cheering on Max Verstappen. I actually had to Google the pronunciation of this bird. There we have it on camera. And he's a Dutch Belgian. I'm not a fan of Formula One, so there we go. I'm better for it. I've learned something new. Thanks for that. Carlos, Meredith, thank you so much for designing the session. I am looking forward to learning from you. We're excited to have you here. Please take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Anna Maria. That's a wonderful introduction, and you always have a way to make it sound better than even when we try to do it ourselves. So thank you so much. Well, welcome everybody. So excited to be here. I'll let Meredith say hello. And
hello, I'm Meredith.
And I'm Carlos. That hair is simulated. There's not much there, but I'll blame it on the limitations of my 3D rendering editing skills. So we are the co-founders of Purple Sector Strategy, and what we do is we work with teams, usually remote teams actually, that to align them around a shared vision. And we do that using collaborative workshops and personalized coaching, and we support them in the creation of things from digital products to nonprofit programs and services. So a wide range of different experiences that we've had the pleasure of working with our clients on. So what we're going to do is talk about digital artifacts and how do you build a collaborative sense around them and use them to build a shared understanding or a shared vision. But before we get into that, we wanted to cover off some of the challenges that remote teams tend to encounter when trying to adopt new approaches or work collaboratively.
So I think it's pretty obvious what we've experienced over the last couple of years going through a global pandemic is that when you're working remotely, those spontaneous conversations and meetups don't happen as easily. We obviously don't have the water cooler and the the lunchroom to just kind of bump into people and have conversations to help fill in those gaps or voice some things that you've been sort of mulling over through the day. So remote really kind of separates us a little bit from that. Now, it's also good to say, though, that even if you are in office, it's not really great to rely on spontaneous bump-ins to get your work done. We need to try and be a little bit more intentional about it, really, overall.
Awesome. And one of the things that we generally see with our clients is it can be hard to discuss what isn't tangible. And what we mean by that is we're often creating intangible digital software or programs that are really just about an experience that you're trying to create for somebody. So that leaves us with what we can latch onto, which sometimes are those nitpicky, micromanagey kind of details, which obviously nobody wants to be left to hearing that kind of feedback. So it can be hard to talk about an experience. It's not something we can touch. It's not something we can actually go and reach and talk about. So that's one of the challenges that we've often seen when working with our clients.
And working remotely can sometimes be a little isolating. You're depending on your setup, you might be home by yourself all day long. And it can start to really feel like you're an island, separate from your team and your company, and not really understanding where you fit in that bigger picture at work.
And of course, something that we do recognize is all of these experiences and all these challenges are very true of not just remote teams. Yeah, some of them might be a little bit more heightened, but all teams face very similar challenges, whether you're in the office or not. Feeling like an island when you're surrounded by people, that's a very real thing too. So keep that in mind that if, even if if a remote team isn't your scenario, that a lot of this will still apply. All right, so what we're going to start to get into is those digital artifacts. What are we talking about? What do we mean by artifacts? And usually what Meredith and I like to think about when we're talking about artifacts are maps. We map the beep out of everything. If Butter had a automatic bleep thing, that could help. But we map everything because we feel that when you see something, it makes it more powerful. And we like referencing this quote from Teresa Torres, who is a product management guru. And she says, maps help us communicate, they help us tell a story, to share a vision, and they inspire action. We agree completely, 100%, they're a big deal. And unlocking those superpowers that they have is something we want to show you today, but it is something that a remote team can very much rely on to improve collaboration and feel like address those concerns that we just talked about. So here's a list of some maps, some tools that you may be familiar with, you may have used yourself. And that's just a fraction of them, right? Like, I was Googling for the list and I was like, okay, that's too many things to put on one slide, and came up with these. But what we're going to focus on today is our favorite tool, which is a story map, or also known as a user story map, a journey map, or service blueprints. We like to condense it down to story maps, just to keep things simple. User story, if you're in the product management world, can have a lot of baggage associated with it. So we actually try to just keep it simple and call it a story map. So something that we were wanting to know is if you've ever heard of a story map before, or those other ways of calling them. If you've ever heard of them and used them, if you've heard of them but not used them, or not heard of them or used them. So we'll have you enter your experiences in the poll to the left there.
And just a quick heads up, after you're picking your answer, you also have to submit your answer in order for us to see it on the other side of the poll.
Thank you for that reminder.
Excellent. So most have heard and used them, which is great. But we do have a nice handful of the other two categories. So by the end of this session today, you'll be able to answer the green button at the at the beginning there. For sure, everybody will be in the same boat. So that's great.
Excellent. All right, so what do we define a story map as? And with the familiarity of the group here, you'll have seen it from experience, you have your own definition for it. But for those that are new to it, what we like to say is a story map is the experience or the story that you are building for your user or your customer or a particular audience, paired with the work your team needs to make it happen. So it's kind of your team story aligned with the story of the person you're creating, whatever it is you're building for. And two core concepts that we like to center around are user tasks and creator tasks. And basically, a user task tells the story of that person, that audience member, that user, across the horizontal axis. And down the vertical axis, we have creator tasks. These are things you and your team need to work on, go research, questions you need to ask, things, basically your to-do list to make the story above happen. So you combine those two things and all of a sudden you're actually giving people a direct connection to the person or the people that you're creating your experiences for.
So we really think that story maps have a handful of what we call superpowers. And the biggest one is really the ability to visualize what it is you're working on and the journey that you want to take your user, your customer through. Obviously, the word map very much conjures, even if you think of a roadmap, gets you from A to B. And a story map does a lot of those same kind of things quite effectively, actually. So we like to say at Purple Sector, if you can see it, you can talk about it. And it's the talking about it that really is the value in the map. It's the discussion around direction and decisions that need to be made, priorities, all of that kind of stuff that come into play when you work with a story map.
Awesome. And what we're going to be doing is actually showing you these superpowers in action very shortly. So keep these in mind as we move through the session. So another great superpower that we have is that a story map is a great way to incorporate and show the impact of user feedback. I know a lot of us have been hit over the heads. We know user feedback is crucial. We need to get that feedback as frequently as possible. But sometimes we stumble on just how much action that it spawns. What changes do we have to make now that we have this feedback? Or how is it relevant? So we use the term pains and gains often. We'll show you again hands-on with some of that, what that looks like. But a story map is a great place to capture this information and communicate it to your team.
Story maps also allow us to really clearly call out accountabilities. So as you're building out your creator tasks, you can assign people from your team to various tasks. And what that does is give a visual representation of what everyone is doing. It also gives them the context so that they understand the point in the user's journey that they are sort of interacting with, and gives them some more context so that they understand why they're building or creating whatever it is they're creating, and sort of how they fit into that bigger picture.
Next, we also like to acknowledge that great teams know that they don't know everything. And Story Map is a place where you can actually pinpoint the biggest assumptions that you're making and the riskiest ones as well. So it gives people a place to focus their efforts on where do we need to do more research? How do we, who should we be talking to so we can bring more clarity and demystify a certain aspect of the story that you're trying to create.
And everybody's favorite metrics. A lot of times we forget about metrics, or sort of forget about metrics, because they can be quite complicated sometimes. But a story map allows us to sort of flag those moments along the journey again that will create these aspects to be measured. And if we know the requirements of what we want to measure, then we can pinpoint exactly when those measurements should occur. And so we can do this in a story map more upfront instead of leaving it to the end and as an afterthought.
And the last superpower that we're going to demonstrate today is that you can make changes in real time, and you're not making changes to your final product, to your final service. You can do that in a more lightweight way, really by moving things like sticky notes or rectangles or boxes on a digital map. And this is a particularly special one for remote teams that you can leverage that might give you a leg up on in-person activities. We've done these activities before in real life scenarios with dozens, if not hundreds of sticky notes, and being able to say, what if we rearrange some of these thoughts and ideas is a lot harder to do. It usually requires, how about everybody go for a lunch break, and you're hoping that you didn't cheap out on the no-name sticky notes that will fall down anyways, right? So when you're using digital tools, we can actually move these things around. Imagine different scenarios, different futures, and all we're doing is just moving some boxes around on a screen. And it really helps in aiding a conversation rather than talking at each other or past each other. You're now using tangible things and asking people, do you mean this? Or what if we did this? And they actually have a visual reference point.
Excellent. So we're going to dive right into an example story map that we've created. Carlos is going to share his screen so that we can follow along with him. So this is a story map that we created actually for this session. So I'll let Carlos zoom in to what's the context, and we'll get started, and we'll just highlight those superpowers and how they apply as we kind of go along and examine.
Excellent. So I'm just starting zoomed out to show you. It can be a little bit overwhelming to look at a story map for the first time when you don't necessarily have the context of what it contains. So there are some approaches that we recommend, and we'll get to those as we walk through the story map and show you how we put it together. But as Meredith mentioned, we started with setting the context. This is always something that winds up being important to do when you're about to create a story map, because you really want to be focused on and aligned around whose story are you actually trying to tell? What experience for whom are you trying to build it for? And why do you want to do this? Why is it important to that person? Why is it important to your organization? All of those things matter. And usually if you skip over this and you start trying to actually map something out, these questions come up frequently because you start to realize, wait, who are we talking about here? So it always helps to ground the exercise first in that light. Now, I'm sure you have gone through many different kinds of workshops and introductions to new tools, and usually they might include imagining different scenarios from your day-to-day life. What we were trying to do is find something that we can all relate to, and that's hard because we all work in different places. We're all over the world, but we do have one thing in common, and that is this session. We're all here right now. So we thought we'd show you the story map for today's session, and this was literally how Meredith and I wound up planning the agenda and what we're going to do before and after it. So the who is yourselves, Collab Fest attendees. You might be facilitators, designers, product managers, program managers. And in fact, if you can share in the chat what your role is, we always are curious about who's looking for these kind of tools, and yeah, love to see what the different roles people have in that. And the why, we're making assumptions here. We're thinking you want to learn some new tools, you want to make remote work better, or you're curious about Butter, right? So there's a couple of folks that haven't used Butter before, maybe that's what caught your eye. And perhaps it was the name of the talk in the session that piqued your interest. So that's the context of the story map we're about to walk you through. I like my puns, and I'm sorry about the what's the story, Morning Glory. I love the Oasis back in the day. So what we'll start with is walking through the horizontal axis, the user tasks that we talked about earlier. So I'll just show you a few examples as we walk through this. But we know that we are all here, session time, over in this section, but lots of stuff had to happen before, and that was a lot of Anna Maria and Cheska and the whole Butter crew pulling a lot of things together to make this happen. So you probably saw a lot of Collab Fest things lighting up social media. Maybe you saw a LinkedIn post. You clicked to learn more about the sessions, and you signed up for this talk. And perhaps you added it to your calendar so you'd be reminded about it. But then you went about your regular business. And whether that was days ago or maybe just a couple of hours ago, we don't really know what you were doing. And that's a blank for us to perhaps it's not necessarily as relevant, but maybe there's some things in there that we'd like to know. But then you had a reminder to start the session, and boom, you started here. So you click the link, et cetera, et cetera. So all of this down here, as we go further down the journey, if you pay attention to the agenda in Butter, is actually this is what's matching as we go through the session. So just wanted to kind of give you walk you through that as the core concept. That storyline across the horizontal is your story as best as we knew it. And of course, now that you're here, we can learn more. But to give you an example of some of the creator tasks that are paired to that, we were using the creator task for introduction to story maps as a way for Meredith and I to collaborate on what did we want to do. We knew we wanted to poll folks on whether they were familiar with story maps in the first place. We wanted to list out what we thought the superpowers were. So this is a place where we used to collaborate on those ideas, and then we went into Canva, made our flashcards, imported them into Butter. So this was kind of our step one of what do we want to talk about and getting ourselves aligned on that.
Right. So if we think about back to the superpowers that we went through really quickly before, the first one was visualize. So clearly, I think everyone can see that it is a very visual tool, a story map. You can see the entire journey as it unfolds. You can decide to sort of zoom in and look really closely at some details, or zoom out and sort of see the whole thing kind of unfold. But really, it's a very clear visual tool with ways of keeping yourselves organized, flagging things, color coding. But you can have some fun. You can use the emojis and all those other kind of things too to sort of convey extra feeling as you build it out.
Awesome. So the second superpower we had referenced before was that showing the impact of user feedback. We mentioned using pains and gains. And on this map, we wanted to acknowledge, hey, there might be some people who are new to Butter. And there were a couple of you from that poll who said this is the first time you're using Butter. So that might have been because you didn't know Butter yet, a potential pain. And now that you do, obviously, it's like the best thing in the world, right? So that should be a green one. But it's always like, is my camera going to work? Is the audio going to work? These are all common things. We've been using video conferencing tools enough to know that there might be some hiccups, and that might be a potential pain point. Of course, though, waiting for the session to begin, you probably were listening to some really grooving music. I mean, and not kidding, the number of clients and people we've had calls with who comment on like, that was like some rockin' music has been phenomenal and frequent. So we had a good hunch to say like, oh, you might be feeling good about that music. But I want to give you some more examples about showing that impact from that pain point. This is user feedback, perhaps, of hey, I've never used butter. This might be a little bit uncomfortable. So there's a couple of things that we want to demonstrate. One is how we can react to that. And one of the things that we wanted to do and make sure of, and Anna Maria was created a poll for this, is to gauge your knowledge of butter. We wanted to ask how many people might be new to this, how many people might need some help and support from the butter team as they're getting familiarized. Now, reacting is one thing, but also anticipating is something better. If you see along the journey that you're about to hit a pain point, what are things that you might be able to do to address that? And perhaps it's as simple as sending a getting started guide to butter, right? For people who might be new to it, giving them a heads up of here's some ways to familiarize with the platform if you get a chance, right? So seeing that pain point is a clue for people to draw some attention and figure out what can be done about it.
All right, our next superpower was accountabilities, and you can see we've used our little avatar circles to allocate, jobs to various team members. So you can see a lot, obviously, of Anna Maria's work at the beginning as we get Collab Fest launched and going. And then as we get into the session details, it sort of naturally turns more to Carlos and I. So the beauty part of setting accountabilities as you're building out your story map is obviously everyone clearly understands what they're responsible for, where they fall in the journey of the user or the customer. And also as a leader, you'll be able to see maybe you have a team member who is completely overloading themselves. They're saying yes to everything, or, they just have said yes to more things than they can reasonably accomplish in a day or in however much time you have to build this out. And maybe you need to rejig. Maybe you've discovered you've got to make something, but you don't have a team member who can reasonably do it. So maybe you've discovered a gap and you need to figure out how you might fill that. Is it bringing someone from outside the team? Is it a new hire? All these kinds of aspects can be really quickly seen by assigning accountabilities as the story map unfolds. But the best part is that everyone really understands the big picture and understands the part they play in that storyline and in that big picture.
Awesome. And we love seeing that connection being made, right? To actually see how you're making an impact in somebody else's life can give you that purpose and make work a lot more engaging. And what we hope a story map can do is literally show you that line, make that link for you. And the next superpower that we talked about is calling out your own assumptions and having a place to put them. And you'll see that there was an assumption we were making for a hands-on exercise portion of this of the session, which is to come. But we were assuming that people would be familiar with using Miro. We're in our little world and bubble where we're using Miro all the time, but we needed to check ourselves to say, well, that's not necessarily true of everyone. Whether it's another similar tool like Mural or FigJam, or that you haven't even adopted one of these digital tools yet. So now, calling out the assumption is one thing that lets us, perhaps in a different capacity, we would have been able to poll some people. Do you know Miro? Do it ahead of time and change and adapt our session for that case. We didn't have that luxury, of course. We didn't know who was going to be attending. Getting an answer to that might have been much more difficult. But it did give us a prompt to figure out, well, can we do this exercise on pen and paper? Is a whiteboard going to work? Yes. So we designed the hands-on exercise to work whether you knew Miro or not. But that was one of those things we wanted to call out, that we were making an assumption, we kept ourselves honest, and as a result, we also wanted to see what we can do to address that. So that's calling out assumptions in practice.
And through the use of color coding on a story map, you can easily call out other aspects like metrics. So you can see we've talked already about how much everybody loves metrics, but they need to, it's a requirement a lot of the time. So we've got a metric there today. So at the end of this session, we're actually going to give you a link. Anna Maria already gave you the link to our free download resource. So of course, Carlos and I will be tracking how many times the resource gets downloaded. So if you don't want to disappoint us, please download the resource. But you know, you can set whatever kind of requirements for metrics you have along the way, and also start thinking about the best ways to actually measure or to trigger those metrics as you go through. You know, we've got so many tools at our disposal these days for measuring and capturing data, but that also adds an extra layer of complexion when we're trying to sort of decide the best way to do things. Metrics absolutely falls into that category. So there they are. They'll be called out along the way, so you're not leaving it to the end, you know, and forgetting about them and then having to scramble is usually the hope anyway.
Excellent. And the last superpower we want to demonstrate in a couple of ways, which is that real-time changing, imagining of different scenarios without really representing a ton of work or scrapping something altogether. So one of the things the eagle eyes in this session may have noticed is, wait a minute, are we not watching story mapping live right now? And I don't remember doing a hands-on exercise. You're right, we haven't done the hands-on exercise yet. And actually, it was in the story map where Meredith and I decided, hey, I think that hands-on exercise might actually make sense after we demonstrate the story map. So in having those conversations, all we simply did was rearrange it, said, does that feel right? Is that looking like it would make sense? What about the hands-on exercise might we have to change for that to make sense? What about the story mapping live session would we have to change for that to make sense? So all of these questions and the conversation that ensued from that were all made possible just by rearranging columns of sticky notes. And that's it's a small thing, but it's also trying to find the right words to explain all the different intricacies of that. I stumble a lot. We've rehearsed, and that's why if you don't think I do, I'm stumbling. So I stumble a lot. So I use these tools quite often to help get that clarification. It's like, I mean this, and it helps people relate to it a lot more without trying to understand. It's like, what the hell are you saying, Carlos? Which happens a lot. So that's one example of that real-time, different scenarios, right? That's a small change. The other one was, you might have noticed another assumption that we were making, which is, what will people really do when they leave? We don't know. You know, what we were hoping and assuming, and wink, wink, nudge, nudge, is you'll connect with us on social media. That's like, you're going to leave this and like, that's the first thing I need to do. And I'm going to go download the resource, and I have all these lingering questions and thoughts. And then maybe I'll get a snack, I'll have a nap, I'll go to bed. I know the butter team, it's late, you've been busy. So yeah, that nap is probably what's going to be happening. So what's really neat though is we have you here right now in the room. So why not, if somebody or many folks, whoever wants to put in the chat what you're actually going to be doing once you leave this session, and then we can actually fill this in with some real examples rather than our assumptions about what you would be doing. So throw anything in there. Nap, dinner and beer. Okay, Anna Maria, you're right. Anyone else ever wine o'clock? Yes. Work. Eric. Oh my gosh. That's, back to it. Yes. Right. Going for a walk with friends and 2 dogs. Finishing my beer. So there is a resounding beverage time that we're seeing. And, when you think about what our role is to play on that, not much. Maybe you can send us a picture and we'll look at it. But that's the reality. And what's really neat, again, is in real time, we're reimagining, hey, how do we respond to that? Maybe we need to check ourselves and not assume that the most important thing to you will be connecting with us on social media. So that's now that we've said it enough, though, please do. But that's one of the most powerful things of that real time, but also demonstrating that when you actually have the person whose story you're trying to tell in the room with you, whoa, you unlock so much more, because a lot of those assumptions start going away. A lot of those pain points and those gains become more clear because you actually can get that response immediately. So that's a really cool thing that we've seen when you have that opportunity. It really gives you the chance to make the changes that make most sense. All right, so we've done enough talking. What we want to do is give you an opportunity to build out your own story map. And this will be a short exercise because we recognize, the one that we mapped out here took quite a bit of time and effort. It was quick, but still more than we will have in the session right now. So we're just opening up a Miro board that you'll all have access to.
So we're going to have each of you build your own story map. So if you're comfortable using Miro, you can find a blank space where we've pre-populated with some dark yellow stickies, which will be your horizontal line or your user tasks, and some light yellow stickies, which are your creator tasks. So we would like you to have something in mind that you're building or creating for a user, a customer, an internal stakeholder, whatever you like, and build out your story for them. Build their story first, and then fill in your part, the pieces that you need to build below. So, and again, if Miro is not your jam, feel free to do this on a piece of paper or a whiteboard in your office. Whatever works for you works perfectly for us. So we're going to set a 5-minute timer and just let everybody build their own story map. If you have any questions, let us know. We've got a little example there to the right, and then the big one from that we were just showing you is to the left of the purple card there. A question from AJ. It's not a stupid question. Miro integrates with Butter, but you don't need a paid Miro account in order to use it. So as you can see, all of you are in Butter right now. You don't even need an account, actually, if you're running the meeting in Butter with outside people, but you can get a free account with Miro and do oodles of things.
See lots of activity there, and even curious if you are working on it or you're already wrapping up, maybe even just share some of your thoughts in chat about the experience of it. We've a lot of these approaches come from we read user story mapping, we read about service blueprints and journey maps and whatnot, but sometimes we found our clients have there's a bigger learning curve in getting it done and putting it into practice. And so anchoring around those user tasks and creator tasks has been a way that we try to make it a lot more approachable, especially if you're trying to introduce this tool to a bigger team.
Miro board as a group.
For those familiar with Miro, I am certainly the show of the cursors. That is like seeing where people's minds are wandering. And don't worry, you're not going to be graded on this. This is really just to give you a chance to put it into practice for yourself.
I agree, Kim. Yeah, Kim put a note in the chat saying it's nice to be able to record things and sort of think through them in steps, and Carlos and I use story maps for everything, clearly. But yeah, it's great for building out even just your to-do list for the day kind of thing. You can be, it's your story too. So it's funny when you're doing it that way, you're kind of both the user and the creator, but it's still good practice, but it really helps to organize and sort of corral the madness that can happen in our brains.
I know we have about a minute left on that timer, but I'm also looking at our session time left of about 5 minutes. So might wrap it up now, but by all means, we'll leave you can still have access to the board and make those changes as you want. But I do think as we open up our next flashcards, it will go away. So let's see here. I will post a link to this board in the chat if you want to keep going. And we'll give everybody access to it. Well, my babbling about wound us getting us to the time anyways. But thanks everybody for giving that a shot. So something that we wanted to do is give you some tips on how to get started and like putting it into practice today. For some of you on the other side of the world right now, you won't be, please go rest. But for some of you, maybe you want to try something this afternoon. But step one is set that context. That's where we see a lot of people trip up because they're not clear on who they're trying to build this experience for. And sometimes it's okay that the story mapping process brings that to light because you might not be clear about that. But there are ways and approaches, and we'll be providing that on how to best set that context and have that conversation.
And next is start scrappy. You can start on a piece of paper. You can start with sticky notes or boxes, whatever suits your fancy. It can be really rough, and try not to get caught up in how everything is looking. So you can certainly start getting your horizontal axis sort of played out and then start building out your creator tasks, and then work on color coding and, snapping the grid together if you're working in Miro to make everything evenly spaced. But you certainly do not need to start that way.
Map their story first. So bringing attention to their, we can easily get lost in the creator task. That's where we live most of the time. We're doing things, we're busy. That's what comes to mind. Focusing your attention first on the experience that you're trying to build for somebody else. That's the thing that usually takes a little bit of time to build that habit, get people thinking, right, this isn't about us. That we will have the time and the space to address that. But map their story first along that horizontal axis. And
2 heads are better than 1. So it's really great if you can work on something like this together with at least one other teammate or friend. And of course, Butter is our favorite collaborative tool. So Butter makes it better.
And our last tip is we have a guide. We put it together. We were wrapping up some of the finishing touches yesterday, but we posted a guide to Gumroad. All the attendees for Collab Fest, whether they're in the session or not, will have access to that to download it for free. So check it out. We go into a little bit more depth on the superpowers, on this, breaking down the steps on how to get started with story maps and introducing it to your team. So excited to be able to provide that for you and hope that you get a chance to check that out. All right, and just to wrap up, again, connect with us on. So I think we've said it enough. We don't need to say it anymore. But we'll post some links there on how to connect with us on Instagram and LinkedIn and whatnot. And just like Johnny Rose, we also have an online presence. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for having us today. It was so great to be with you all.
Awesome. Thank you very much. It was really interesting because I design learning experiences and workshops, of course, events, and I found it as a very easy way to get the job done, keeping an overview of everything. So it felt simple as a method, like quite easy to grasp. So thank you for showcasing that. And I think it was Kim that says, hey, I love getting resources. We're packing all of the recordings, all of the resources, all of the goodies, freebies, downloadables. There's tons of good from the Experts Collective that is going to come your way, most probably next week after we finish with all the recordings, all the madness and everything. I had a poll prepared, but I'm going to throw it off because I want to ask you actually another question that just came to my mind. That's it, improvisation. Also, end of the day, so I kind of like I'm like, let's do this. I'm very interested to know, and we're going to use the chat for this. Where will you use this? Like, where do you see opportunity to use this method in your work? Maybe exactly as you saw it today, maybe slightly tweaked, maybe just taking parts of it and put it into something else. I'm just very keen to hear. I mean, you spend the hour with us, the 45 minutes. So clearly there's something there. What are you taking away and for what? AJ?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, so always happy to kind of comment. I think there would be a lot of brainstorming sessions that we are doing currently, and this is one area wherein so I'm working as an HR manager, so this is one area wherein large number of tech leaders are coming to us that brainstorming something that they are not able to do. So we just last week had a quarterly summit and everyone was like, this is working. So in quarterly summit, everyone came to Bangalore in India to the office, and they are saying that work from anywhere policy is not working as good as these kind of sessions. So I think brainstorming is something that we would love to kind of use this. But there can be on a daily meetings as well. I think there is an opportunity wherein we can get benefited.
Yeah, I think about all the projects. I would be like, we could just build all our projects like that. What do you say, Eric? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Like, hold your horses. Hold your horses, Anna Maria. Yes, there we go.
We've seen teams adopt it as far as like, this is how they run their daily stand-ups. They will actually open this up, realign what's changed, and I think that's the doorbell.
Package delivery. Well, that's fine. That's our cue to wrap up. 3 minutes. 3 minutes. 3 minutes on top of the hour. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Meredith. Thanks everyone for joining. I've popped the link for Collab Fest. That's this thing we're doing. Tomorrow is the second day. Feel free to pop by if any of the session are kind of looking interesting for your field of work. It was an absolute pleasure to spend the day with you. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow. And I have enabled the soundboard. We haven't done that today in any of the sessions, but I thought, like, why not? On the React button, you have a second tab now. It's the soundboard. So I want you all to make some noise for Carlos and Meredith.
Bingo. Bingo.